So, our next segment, let's talk about that. The good old Mormon church, wanting its cake and eating it. This is the thing when you have a religion that claims to have a direct line to God. You can just make shit up as you go along and say whatever suits you. This article comes from the Associated Press from November the 6th and is by Sam Metz. It it doesn't look at all, anything at all, like a political move to gain more members. That, for you that may not be aware, is sarcasm. We are told that the Mormon Church is happy, very happy, incredibly happy to support same-sex marriage. But same-sex relationships, you know, those touchy-feely, icky things, that's still a sin. So the Mormon Church giving out mixed messages in this one. I'm going to jump straight in with Ben and ask for your opinion on this.
All right, yeah. So I might have a hot take here, but I'm not opposed to this perspective from the Mormon Church. And I'm not Mormon. I do not agree with their ideology here, but the fact is, like, they can have whatever rules they want in the Mormon Church. If they want to say this is how you become a Mormon and this is how you stay in our church, fine. My problem is when those Mormons say you in the secular community or whatever other community you're part of have to partake in our rules as well. And so the fact that if they've come out and said that you can have a legally binding marriage, that's fine, but it's a sin in my religion. I honestly don't have a problem with that, because at least they're giving us the leeway to have identical legal benefits, assuming that that's what they're agreeing to here. But as a bisexual trans man who is engaging in a lot of sinful activity, according to the Mormon Church, just as I would not support a religious group interfering with a secular identity, I'm fine with the Mormon Church letting us have at least a way to bypass their religious mandates. So even if I would not be accepted in my marriage with the Mormon Church, fine. And that might offend some people who are Mormon and identify with the LGBTQ community. And that's a whole separate discussion, because I don't represent them. But like, as long as I have a way to bypass that problem and to still have identical benefits, I really don't have an issue with this.
Kelley.
Yeah, I on the one hand, this bill seems like a good thing, right? And then you explore the subject a little deeper and you begin to realize why the Church of Latter-day Saints is for this bill. It lets them opt out of it. That's plain and simple. If this bill gets passed, they don't have to conform to it. And if that's the case, and any religious person or organization can opt out, well, what's the purpose of the bill, right? It isn't the non-religious that are attacking same-sex marriage. It's only the religious. And if this bill is allowing those people to still be a threat to non-traditional marriage, it's not helping anything, right? As Richard said, the good old Mormon Church seems to want to have its cake and eat it too. But in the process, they're tossing out a whole section of people in our society that they feel should be discriminated against. And are you really having your cake and eating it too when you're throwing part of it away? I don't think so, right? I agree with the basic idea behind the bill, but I don't know that it's really doing anything, right? Richard, what do you think?
I think it's a step in the right direction. I don't think this is a problem so much with the bill in itself. I think and let's remember we're discussing here the article itself, which is talking about the Mormon perspective on it, rather than the bill itself. But I think, from my perspective, I've had dealings with the Mormon Church, and I think for me it's blatantly obvious that there's only one reason that they're changing the stance on kind of gay marriage with this, and that's the same reason that they change the stance on anything. Then that is because they're trying to get members. They're trying to rebrand as mainstream Christians, downplaying all the crazy shit that they've got. And, there's a lot of it. We touched on it a couple of weeks ago, the last time we were on together, Kelley, when we were talking about Cain being Bigfoot in some
Bigfoot,
areas
yeah.
of the Mormon tradition. And they want to downplay all that crazy stuff, and that people live on the moon and things like that, which are all parts of Mormon teachings. And they want to emphasize Jesus, and they want to become kind of more. They want to rebrand as more mainstream Christianity, and that's just simply because they're hemorrhaging members. And I think that's an important point itself, which relates to this. Official Mormon figures tell a very different story, and that in itself is interesting. But when we look at the official Mormon figures, Mormons count anybody who has ever been baptized, whereas non-church and secular polls count self-identifying Mormons. And the church knows this full well. And the church makes it increasingly difficult for members to leave. You've got to literally take the Church of the Latter-day Saints to court, which is an intimidating and expensive measure for them to officially remove you from their records. So, they are quite really skewing the numbers. And that's a very important factor into why they're rebranding. And that is exactly why they're trying to change the public perception of them. And I think that is the reason why this bill, why they're not publicly so opposed to this bill, is because it's all part of that huge rebranding that they're having at the minute. So, it's a difficult one. Anytime a religious organization kind of supports something like this, I think it's a good thing. I genuinely think it's a good thing. I think if we're looking more into it, I think the reasoning behind it is somewhat nefarious. But it depends on I think for a gay person in the Mormon community, it is very difficult for gay people in the Mormon community. I think this will be a huge kind of breath of fresh air for them. It's almost like the church is kind of vindicating them and saying, we do accept that you are legitimate in some way, even if the church's reasons for doing so probably aren't the best. But I'm going to pass on over to Ben because I've been talking for a while now.
Yeah,
Let
no,
someone else have a say.
I do want to mention, like, this is a battle that we've been fighting within the LGBTQ community for a long time with a lot of religious organizations. And yes, like, part of me does care about their intentions, but more so, I don't. More so, I care about the actions that are happening. And if somebody wants to hate me for being gay or hate me for being trans, but they at least take efforts to say, hey, I'm at least going to support you in what your rights are as a person and what you want to do with your life. Sure, I can wish as much as I want that this person would change their intentions, but this is a fantastic first step. They don't necessarily need to change their full intentions in order to benefit the group that uh, is targeted by this bill. So while it's not the end result that I would desire in the future, this definitely is improvement, and hopefully their intentions will change. But in the meantime, I'm willing to accept poor intentions for good action as opposed to good intentions with poor action.
Yeah, I love this. I do love this conversation, and not just from the Mormon perspective, from the wider religious perspective, because I think it is. We see this not just in Mormonism, and we talked about it a few weeks ago on the non-profits when I think we're talking about Catholicism at the time, and kind of getting that weighing balance of, is it better to have religious people who are true to the faith and all the bullshit and horrors that brings, or is it better to have religious people who remain religious and accept more liberal ideas and move in the right direction? And it's it's a difficult conversation to have because there are so many factors to it. I fully appreciate what you're saying, Ben. I accept that it's a step in the right direction. I don't know if I'm biased with this because I do personally know someone who is gay and sought advice from her bishop in the Mormon church, and she was sent to a Mormon counselor. So let's be blunt, but I mean there, she was given conversion therapy. And she's now married to a man and still an active member of the church. So I do have a bias on this. I know people who've been personally affected by the Mormon church. And for me, this it screams. It's not just a little like whimper. This is screaming Mormons changing the mind for the wrong reasons. And I'm torn on it. I've got to admit I'm really torn on it. Kelley, what do you think?
Well, I will agree with you that the Mormon Church took a really big hit on the whole Prop 8 debacle in California. So, I mean, maybe this is a way to appeal to the younger crowd after they really messed up then. I do agree with the basic idea behind this bill. Don't get me wrong by what I said before, because I really do. I just see it as just a tiny bone being tossed to the forward-thinking people to shut us up, in my eyes, it really doesn't do its intended purpose. However, as we said, baby steps. It's at least a step in the right direction. And me being older, I remember when that horrible idea of don't ask, don't tell was accepted by the U.S. military in the 90s. And at that time, it was lauded as a huge step forward, even if 15 years later, it was seen as the farce that it really was, right? So, its passage did, however, get people talking about it, and it led to more openness, more open dialogue, and it ended up with members of the military being able to be legally, openly gay about their sexuality in the military. So I'm hoping that this bill does the same thing, that it creates that more open dialogue, and it moves our society a little farther down the road to true acceptance.
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree that there are some nefarious intentions here. And again, I hope that it heads in a better direction, and I hope that they don't take further actions to inhibit progress. But like as this has been such a struggle for so long, I'm willing to give them a little bit for this little bit of progress that they've granted us. And yeah, and I don't think at all that it's ethical for the church to be treating the community like they have been, and that should absolutely end. But I think queer people should not be involved in any of these organizations at all. But it's, again, like we were talking about with the previous article, there's some nuance to this conversation that it's difficult to look at this and say this is blanketly what should be the correct answer, because there's a lot here that we could probably take hours to uncover with the exact nuance. But I do think there's been a lot of good points here today.
Yeah,
I think
go on, Kelley.
I was going to say, unfortunately, we can't solve the problem in only 20 minutes. I wish we could, but unfortunately.
No. I think the Mormon Church, of course, has been here before, or somewhere like this before, when they allowed eventually, and again under the same kind of circumstances, that it was becoming more acceptable socially, when they allowed black people the priesthood in 1978. And it's, this is not a new thing for the Mormon Church, changing their stance on something when social issues in the wider community are moving in that direction. And it is a step in the right direction, and nobody can, I don't think, argue against that. It's not their stance on this bill particularly, which is the problem for me. It's the motivation behind it. And I think while ever you've got a whether it's a religious or secular organization, anybody who is kind of saying one thing in the public domain and doing another behind closed doors, it's going to be problematic. I'd like to see the Mormon Church not just pay lip service to this bill, but to actually allow gay people in their own community the right to have those relationships themselves. You know, when the Mormon Church starts allowing same-sex marriages within that community, then I'll be much, much more impressed with the Mormon Church than kind of agreeing to a bill that it doesn't affect their own members. You know, and like it's a nuanced conversation. It's a very interesting conversation for both Mormonism and in the wider community. Is it a step in the right direction? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think it probably is a step in the right direction, but I'd say it's a baby step in the right direction. So let's go for some final thoughts on this. Kelley, we'll go with you first on this one.
I have to agree. It is a step in the right direction. I just wish that step hadn't been just a baby step, that we had taken a much longer gait at this point, because it's about time. I think it's time for us to realize that we are just not up to date with the legality of our society, right? We just need to get more in step with with the way that people really feel, like the majority of people feel. So that's it.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean, same kind of thoughts. It would be very nice if the Mormon Church would catch up with society and not just, throw around their like communication with God to correct themselves and not face any consequences for the previous decision they made. So of course, like a bunch of their congregation decides, yeah, I don't like this church anymore because they oppose gay rights. And now they're like, hold on, but we don't actually oppose gay rights because God says it's a sin, but you can still do it legally in the court system. So it's fine. It's like they love to backpedal, and it's very disingenuous. And so I agree with your points on that. But it'd be nice if eventually they stop deciding to just like appease everybody in their audience while also trying to manipulate them, and just either said everything outright and committed to it, or actually tried to do things for the right reasons. But
yeah, steps in the right direction. That's we have a whole segment dedicated to it. It's let's hope that in the future they take a few more steps in that direction.